Hello there! Welcome back to The Spell, where we're stuck with these four. Yes, four. The other is got this. No. Well then. I want to know where this goes. Drinking competition for the win! Yes, that was in the last episode. That's what was, I think is hinted. Emily and Lowe's glared at each other from the corner of their eyes. At first, they wanted to laugh at how immature Steve and Roxanne were acting. But the more it excluded, the more it became evident that it had become something more than a simple juvenile game. Oh god, drunken gaming at its finest. At least, Roxanne declared they would play an old maid. The old maid game. Mind game. Yeah, that works. And that every time one of them, Steve and Roxanne, decide a card, the other would have a drink. It's gonna be entertaining. I'd like to know what happened. After 8 beers and 5 games, the atmosphere had become somewhat heavy. Lois and Emily had finally given up on playing with them. They instead retreated into the living room, watching a movie, while glancing from time to time at the drunken Bubbles, who looked more like two mortal enemies. Oh then. Wait, is she moving? Yeah, she's moving. How is Steve just standing there going, nothing has happened? They were still at it, yet, to make matters even worse, they had changed games. Decided that poker would be even more punishing. Of all the things they could bet with, instead of money or chips, they decided they would bet with the amount of beer they would consume instead. Okay, this could be a death game. Plus, Miss Roxanne's already swam back and forth, man. But at that point, Roxanne was kind of swam from left to right. Her eyes seemed hard to keep open. Steve, on the other hand, was unmoving. Physically, and most likely psychologically unmoved. They had stopped talking for some time now. Ah shit, how am I gonna do a drunken German surgeon? Why is something your pocket face? So must be a trouble. Now, just get I think that's the closest I could do at the moment. A little bit of time I could get better. Said the woman who had take multiple breaths in between those lines in order to not lose track of her own inner monologue. Steve has already lost it. Still, Steve was not speaking. He didn't take the bait. Yet Roxanne was right for one thing. His expression was a bit stiffer than usual. Was he affected after all? 10 minutes later, Roxanne was KO'd on the dinner table. Steve sighed, got up from his seat slowly, grabbed and then lifted the teacher carefully. He looked at us and said, I'll lie her down for a while. And then falls over. I'm still completely capable of another sounds. Roxanne said, though he didn't move much. Steve didn't listen to her. Lois wouldn't either. She was way past the point where she could evaluate her own needs, apparently. Well, that would make sense. He took the first door on his right, disappeared into his room quietly. Emily and Lois looked at each other, a bit stunned, but soon started giggling uncontrollably. And the serial strange of their former teacher dissented behavior. Now we know. They continued watching their movie for another 30 minutes until they heard a big thud, as if someone had just fallen on the floor without considering their fall. Do you think they are... I don't know. Wanna go check? Do I want to know? On the other hand, I don't want to know. He pushed the volume up button from the television's controller until they were sure they wouldn't hear anything they shouldn't be hearing. Good. That is good. 25 minutes later, Steve came out of his room with Roxanne still in his arms. He had put a sweatshirt on her, probably to make sure she wouldn't be cold during the ride home. Emily, you want a ride? She looked at her cell phone, then at her cell phone again, and ultimately said sure without a hint of assuredness. Bye. Not going any further than that. Hello said with a big grin. Text me when you get home. Yeah. We'll see about that. She pulls out a magnum. Emily seemed a bit scared, probably because she didn't feel comfortable being alone with Steve. Lois gave her a confident nod, assuring her slightly that everything would be alright. Soon, Lois was left on her own in this big, seemingly empty apartment. And then, after 5 minutes, she noticed that she didn't like Steve after all. When she was alone, this place does indeed scare her. It doesn't take much. A neighbor walked loudly, or her cat playing with her mouse toy. Every little thing would catch Lois' attention. And then things happened! It didn't take long for her to shamelessly open all the lights in the living room. Living room. That's when she realized the door to Steve's room was open. Something she was not accustomed to seeing. Something must have happened. She thought back to what had just transpired. Steve and Roxanne in his arms. When he came out of his room, so his movements were probably restrained, and that's why the door was left completely open. She decided that he had to close it. It ticked her off somehow. she look into it? As she walked towards the door, she noticed something shiny reflected light from under Steve's bed. This caught her attention. She impulsively entered his room, for no other reason than to curiously alone. It was weird because she had never entered his room before. Was the definition of unknown territory in her own home. So this is what his room looks like. Obviously, though, everything was quite plain. Colors were pretty much the same, albeit with significant differences. Tones of gray and white. He had only a bed, a couple of cabinets for clothing, and other necessaries, and a closet. She could only sigh in disappointment when she noticed the complete lack of personality that was estimating for his room. Or maybe it was the extent of his personality right there, almost entirely empty, plain, void of life. Well, we'll have to see what the shiny thing is, because it's shiny. She went down on all fours, as she recommended. Why, she had actually came in here for the first place. She kept her left hand on the floor in order to keep her balance, and then extended her right arm underneath Steve's bed, sweeping from top to bottom in an attempt to find what had shone so brightly in her eyes just a moment earlier. Don't tell me it's covered in blood. I want it covered in blood. It was a simple coin, or maybe a jewel. No, Steve doesn't even wear jewelry. She suddenly touched something small and cold. It felt like steel, and it had a rectangular form. This is it, she thought. Could it be? She grabbed it and polished her weight back in order to sit on her knees. But before she could open her fist and look at what treasure she just excavated, something vivid appeared in her line of sight. It was her other hand, the one which had been on the floor just a second earlier. There was blood on it. I kinda have a bad feeling. She grasped her heart, almost jumped out of her throat. She thought she had just now hurt herself, but it didn't sting. She had no physical reaction aside from the strong fear grasping at her heart right now. When there had become a bit clearer, another thought emerged in her mind. This didn't calm her down at all, in fact. She started hyperventilating. She looked ever so slightly at the floor. And in front of her, a couple of drops of blood were transcending on the otherwise clean, dark wooden floor. Blood coming from someone other than her. Could it be Roxanne? There was a thud. She then remembered the thud she had heard earlier with Emily. The sound of someone falling on the floor, and Steve extending his room with the motionless Roxanne in his arms, hidden by the dim light of the television and the dark sweatshirt she was now wearing. Oh. We'll have to get more evidence next episode, because, so far we kind of found out that, he is now murderer. Debatably. There's not enough evidence to support that. But, on the end of the episode here, we'll see more next time, and I hope all of you have a great and wonderful time, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great and wonderful day, too.